All right, so it says solving quadratics by factoring. So if you want to fold it, you can. If not, you can just leave it like it is. Okay, that's totally up to you. All right, so starting with the example that's at the top, you'll see actually there's a property here called the zero product property, and you're going to see why we call it the zero product property in a second. So basically what you're going to do, you're going to factor the problems. So we already know how to factor. That's not a big deal. The only thing that has been added to these problems is an equal sign and zero. So at first you were only given like 12x squared plus 14x, and then you were to factor that. Now we're adding the zero property, which means you basically set it equal to zero, and then you're going to factor it. So when you're done, it's going to look like this. All right. After you factor, what you do is you set each one of these factors, you're going to set them equal to zero. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take each factor, that means take each one individually, and set it equal to zero. So once you have it equal to zero, obviously you're going to solve the equation. That's the whole point of setting it equal to zero. So of course, when I add 7, this will equal to 7. Here, I'm going to have to subtract 2 and divide by 3. So this will come out to be x equals negative 2/3. So what we're finding when we do this, we're still finding the x-intercepts. The good thing about solving it this way, because now if you get a fraction or a decimal, you can actually tell what the exact answer is. So at the end, you would just use your little set brackets, put both answers inside, and now those are your solutions, which are called your roots, your x-intercepts, all of that. Okay. So that's really the whole process. It's not a hard process since the majority of it involves factoring, and we already know how to factor. So let's start with question number 1. So in question number 1, sometimes you can just simply, again, factor out the GCF. So the GCF in number 1, okay, what will 12 and 14 have in common? 2. And then when you look at the variables, they also have an x in common. So you're going to factor out a 2x. So when I divide 12x squared by 2x, I'm going to be left with 6x plus 7. So keep in mind, this is a factor and this is a factor. Okay, so now we're going to set both factors equal to 0. It just happens to be one factor is not a binomial, and that's fine. And we'll set the other factor equal to 0. So when I divide by 2, x equals 0 for that one. That means the x-intercept is 0. And I'm going to subtract 7 and divide by 6. So then I put it in my little set brackets, and it doesn't matter which one you write first because these are not coordinates. Okay. So this is called, solving quadratics, because remember, solving or getting a solution is the same thing as getting your x-intercept. So we're just doing it in a different method. So now we have x squared plus 11x plus 18. So first we're going to factor it. So what times what gives you 18 that will equal to 11 when I add it together? 9 and 2? Will that work? So x plus 9, x plus 2, and then we're just going to set them equal to 0. Okay, solve the first one, you're going to get negative 9. Solve the second one, you get negative 2. So my roots or my solutions would be negative 2 and negative 9. All right. So like I said, this is a pretty easy lesson just because You know, we already have the factoring down. We're just setting those equal to 0. So now we're going to do our A times C term. So I'm going to make my X. And 8 times 3 gives us what? 24 at the top and 14 at the bottom. So what times what will give us 24 that will add up to 14? 12 and 2. So we're going to be using 12 and 2. We're going to divide that by the A term, which is 3. So when I reduce 12 over 3, that's going to give me what? 4 over 1. And then I start from the bottom up. 3x plus 2. And bottom up here, x plus 4. And again, don't forget, just set them equal to 0. So now I have 3x plus 2 equals 0. X plus 4 equals 0. I'm going to solve both. So that'll give me negative 2/3, and this will give me negative 4. So you use your set brackets again and put negative 4 and negative 2/3. So it would be very hard if you were to look at the graph and try to say it was crossing, you know, the x-axis at negative 2/3, but mathematically you can figure it out. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and finish up the next few. So we have 18x squared minus 30x. What is the common factor? What is the largest number that can go into 18 and 30? Yes. There's one larger than that. Yes. All right, 6x. So you always want to make sure you're choosing the largest number, which means you're dividing both of these by 6x. So when I do that, I'm going to be left with 3x minus 5. Set those factors equal to 0. Okay, so when I divide by 6, this is just going to give me 0 over here. Add 5 and divide by 3. Okay, then I use my set brackets and say 0 and 5/3. Okay, so I'm going to let you finish up 4 and 6. Okay, and then after that, you're just going to follow the agenda.